Hi, everyone. It's my great pleasure to have here with us today Professor Lyle Massey from the Department of Art History in the School of Humanities. Hello, Lyle. How are you?
Hi, Annalisa. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for accepting my invitation. So, Lyle, what are you going to show us today?
So today you're going to see a video we made of me making a triple orange loaf cake. And this is, in a lot of ways, just a way to use all the citrus that we have in California. We are inundated, many of us, with fruit trees that bear a lot of citrus, a lot of lemons and oranges and limes. And so this is actually a very nice recipe for using a lot of orange juice and peel in a loaf cake that's kind of a modified pound cake. That's a very light and buttery cake, but soaked in orange, very, very orangey.
So, did you use your own oranges from your backyard or did you buy some?
I'm lucky. I own a house that has actually 5 citrus trees at this point. We bought one that when we bought the house, it had 2 orange trees on the property, and then we added a couple more. We added a blood orange, and we have a caracara orange and a
Mhm.
mango orange, and then we also have lemons. I'm seeking more. I would love a
Right.
lot and some lime.
So, is there a specific kind of orange that is best for this kind of cake, or any kind of orange would do?
Well, I did end up using our navel oranges,
Hmm.
which are a bit sweeter.
Yeah.
The juice oranges are a little more tart. They would probably work too, though. There's a lot of sugar in this cake, so you're balancing the acidity of the fruit against sugar.
Hmm.
But I think pretty much any orange can be used. You could make it with blood orange, and it'd be a beautiful color. I think that would be lovely as well. So yeah, I think you have, and you can make it with lemon. You could actually do this as a lemon cake instead. Same principle.
Right. Perfect. And so this is a very versatile recipe, but what was your motivation for picking this particular recipe, apart from the fact that it allows you to use all this citrus?
So I I mean, every year we have to use our oranges, and I make a lot of marmalade and a lot of other recipes as well. But I made this particular cake on the night before the inauguration. So it was January 19 that I made this cake for the first time this year, and I hadn't actually made it for a couple of years. And one of the reasons that I made it was I the building anxiety about the inauguration, especially after the events of January 6th with the invasion of the Capitol. The building anxiety about it, but also the hope and prayer that everything was going to go well on the day of the inauguration. And I picked the orange cake because it was symbolic. There's a kind of allegorical element to this cake, which is that I had to use those oranges, but orange was also the color associated with the outgoing president. And so I made that cake, and in the morning we had slices of it, and with our coffee as we watched the helicopter leave with Trump in it. And then the rest of the day we watched the inauguration and were so relieved at the transfer, what was the peaceful transfer of power.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
and also we loved all of the events of the inauguration, and we were very, very happy to see the new occupants in the White House. So this was a ceremonial cake in a lot of ways.
Wonderful, wonderful. We need a new start. We hopefully this terrible year will be, we start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. We saw the end of the Trump era, hopefully for good.
And it was I think it was such a tumultuous year in so many ways. It's almost impossible to categorize all of the sources of anxiety that we all had. And certainly one of the things that happened, I have called this a rage bake.
Mhm, mhm.
I have to actually qualify that a little bit. Before the pandemic, before literally a year ago, February, a book was published that was called Rage Baking: The Transformative Power of Flour, Fury, and Women's Voices. And it was published by, it was edited by two white women with contributions by a lot of sort of notable figures in food, food writing in the United States. But it was also published without acknowledging the origin of the hashtag Rage Baking. That the hashtag itself was coined by a woman, an African-American woman named Tangerine Jones, a blogger, who coined that hashtag on Instagram in 2015. So it was right around the time of the rise of Donald Trump as a candidate. She coined that term and started posting the things that she was baking. And that term, Rage Baking, really very specifically referred to her fears and anxieties surrounding racial justice. And so right before the pandemic started, this book was published in which they didn't acknowledge her at all. And it became, as you can imagine, a kind of scandal in which this sort of the racial animus and the racial problems in the United States were crystallized in this conflict between this book and this woman who had originated the whole idea of rage baking. So I wanted to say immediately, I'm calling this an act of rage baking, but I want to absolutely acknowledge that I understand this as solidarity with somebody like Tangerine Jones, who was cooking and baking specifically to express her needs regarding racial justice and what she saw as the racial injustices in her life and in the United States. So on that said, I think so many of us were rage baking this whole last year. It's been such a stressful year. I know so many people, so many neighbors and friends got sourdough starters going and started baking every week. And part of that was the pandemic, us being all locked at home. And so your kitchen was your only place to find an outlet. But it was also that, there were so few things that we could do. And then as soon as George Floyd was murdered and we had BLM protests all over, and then the political realm started heating up for the election, it just got worse and worse. And it seemed often for me personally that baking was one of the few outlets that I had to kind of get in there. And I did a lot of symbolic baking. I mean, this is a long line of symbolic bakes.
What else did you bake during this turbulent, to say the least, year?
Well, so I before this, the last thing I had baked that was symbolic was this was November 7. So it was right when the networks finally called the election for Biden and Harris, after a week of that incredible tension after the election itself. And I baked a Banbury cake, which is a very complicated English cake that is in a checkerboard pattern. It was sort of a raspberry and lemon checkerboard cake, and it was draped in marzipan, which I made. So it was a very complicated cake, and probably not worth, honestly, all of that work. But we had that with a bottle of champagne. And one of the interesting things about Banbury cake is that it is traditionally served on the feast of St. George. And as a Europeanist, as somebody who basically works on Renaissance art history, that registered with me that we were slaying a dragon here. And so St. George was on my back.
Yes.
And that was it was the dragon being slayed on November 7th.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Lyle, so much for, reminding us of all the significance of baking during this year, and also, during the Trump era, as a way of expressing rage and finding an outlet for frustration, and also for reminding us of the origin of the hashtag. And also, in the end, for presenting this cake to us as a cake for celebration. And hopefully we are all seeing the end of this turbulent times. And I really hope that next year, in the 2021, and then surely in 2022 we will be able to go back to something like our normal and forget about this new normal that I don't think really suits us so well. But anyway, here we are. So thank you once again for being with us, and to all of you who are watching us, goodbye and enjoy. Bye.
Always a good time for cake and coffee.
Absolutely. Bye.